Hello, coming to you from flooded Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, water-treading Bryce. Tied in with the popular recurring Out of the Dust geek list on Board Game Geek, the Out of the Dust podcast is a weekly podcast that is focused on re-exploring games we played that we hadn't previously played in a year or more. Why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. This week on the podcast, episode 35. On the Out of the Dust segment, I'll bring Captain Sonar out of the dust, and a contributor will dust off Where in the Wild and By Golly. On the reaction segment, I'll describe the greatest period of reprint Kickstarters ever seen before. On the What I've Been Playing segment, I review Dominion Renaissance. On the Obscure Bryce Game segment, I review Catan Ancient Egypt. And we wrap up the episode by taking a look at where Steam Park is now. I had a chance to log an Out of the Dust play of Captain Sonar recently. This is a game I don't own myself, but my friend Warren is a big fan, and I played it several times with him when the game first released a couple of years ago. I've played it since then, and in fact my last log play was 2 years, 4 months, and 16 days ago. I don't mind real-time games, but I'm not a fan of deduction games, so I've always had mixed feelings about Captain Sonar. But it's quick and inoffensive, and so I don't mind playing it from time to time. This play happened because the group I was with just happened to have 8 players exactly, and when that happens, one should always ensure to get a play or two of Captain Sonar in, since that exact player count so rarely actually occurs in the wild outside of conventions. This was a particularly memorable play because I won as the captain of my team for the first time ever against Warren and a vastly more experienced crew. No one is ever impressed when Bryce wins a game of anything, but I gave myself a pat on the back for this one. Let's see what a contributor brought out of the dust. Sharon Khan, username Saw266, brought a couple of unique kids games out of the dust recently. She writes, quite a number of dusty games this month as I try to work through the pile of games I haven't played in a while, with the kids over half term, with the aim of reducing our collection by getting rid of these games we almost never play. Also, there are the usual games that just miss being played in under a year just because we have so many games. The first of these games she mentions is Where in the Wild, a very obscure 1992 set collection game with no credited designer, from educational publisher Living and Learning. Sharon last played it 2 years, 11 months, and 4 days ago, and rates it a 6 out of 10. One of only 2 people ever to rate this game at all on BGG. She writes, this was a huge hit with my son when he was 4, and I played it over 100 times in a month. But now they're older, he just turned 9. I was wondering whether to get rid of it. After 8 plays of the month, I can say the answer is no. It's still just as popular now that they're older. It's such a short game, you play multiple games at a sitting, and is surprisingly fun for something so simple. We'll keep this one a bit longer. The other unique kids game Sharon brought out of the dust is By Golly, a real grand memory game from acclaimed husband-wife designer-artist duo Frank Nestel and Doris Mateus. Sharon last played it 2 years, 5 months, and 12 days ago and rates it a 5 out of 10. She writes, this was one of the games on the pile I assumed they were going to say I could get rid of, as it's been so long since we played it, and it was never that much of a hit anyway. But they really enjoyed it and asked to keep it, so maybe not. It is just a light memory game, a bit like Matching Pairs, but slightly different. We'll see how long it is until the next play. Thanks for the contribution, Sharon. I'm always on the lookout for interesting kids games, and I'm going to keep an eye out for both of these in the future. Reaction segment time. You know what? Kickstarter is really exciting me this month, but it's not even because of new games being launched on the platform. It's because of reprints being launched on the platform. But I'm not talking about your average run-of-the-mill reprint of a game that funded for the first time just last year. I'm talking about reprints of legendary proportions, amazing games that haven't seen the light of day in years and years, games that have become grails for a lot of people, and in the case of one of these games, a game that was fetching several $100s on the secondary market before its reprint was announced. I'm talking about Age of Steam, Glen, and Key Market. Can you believe all 3 of these are funding at the same time? It's absolutely incredible, and a board game dream come true. First, it's been over 11 years since the last edition of Age of Steam was released. It's never been as scarce to come by as the other two games, but it's never been a game known for its physical appearance or table presence, and this new deluxe edition from Eagle Gryphon Games looks amazing. Eagle Gryphon knows how to make deluxe editions, and I can't wait to see how they bring this whole package together. Of course, my friend Chad over at the Punchboard Paradise podcast is most excited about the Ian O'Toole art, but I'm looking forward to the plethora of maps that come with the game. I know from my experience with Steam that these expansion maps change up the game in unexpected and exciting ways and guarantee tons of replayability. As for Glen, that's been one of my most sought-after games for a long time. I play it frequently at Yucata and taught it to my wife at Spielbound, Omaha's local board game cafe. They used to have a copy in their library. I say used to because Glen is one of the few games that anyone has stolen from the shelves. The improved components will be nice, of course, but the new gameplay elements have me really intrigued. A lot of people are wondering if it's even possible to improve upon Glen, which is already highly esteemed, but if that new sideboard managed to do just that, we could be looking at a future top 50 game on BGG here. Now, Key Market. This has been my #1 grill game ever since I first discovered the Key series of games and learned that the earlier entries in Keyflower had all been limited releases. It was with dismay that I began tracking the secondary market for Key Market in particular, which is one of the highest ranked entries in the series, and saw it very rarely become available for purchase, and tending to sell for well over $200 when it did, which put it out of my reach. I was filled with joy and glee when I read designer Richard Breeze's post on BGG a little over a year ago, soliciting opinions on whether he should reprint Key Market. This was completely unexpected, as none of the older Key games had ever been reprinted before. It gives me hope that the success of this reprint will inspire him to reprint the even older Key series of games. That would be glorious. In the meantime, here we have 3 stellar reprints going on all at the same time. It's going to be a fun time later in the year with these ship. On the What I've Been Playing segment this week, I'm going to tell you about Dominion Renaissance, the latest expansion for designer Donald X. Vaccarino's modern classic Dominion, and the 12th expansion overall. As the title of the expansion hints, the theme of this set is scientific and artistic growth. This set reminds me a lot of the popular Prosperity expansion, which, though not mine, is many people's favorite expansion. There are a lot of very powerful cards and mechanisms in this set designed to help a player play more of their cards, streamline their decks through trashing, and acquire other more powerful cards more quickly. Not the least of these new mechanisms is the new Villager keyword, which, similar to the coin tokens from previous expansions, grants players additional +1 action tokens that players can save and use later. There are 2 new types of cards in this set. Artifacts grant players individual special abilities for the duration of the game after they acquire them through the use of other kingdom cards. Projects are public special abilities that players can purchase during their buy phase and gain access to for the rest of the game. These cards start in play, and players could potentially gain access to them right away. Both of these card types go right along with the theme of the expansion and only enhance the feeling of unlimited power players experience playing with a set like this one. I think my favorite card from this expansion would have to be the Priest, which costs 4 money, grants a player 2 money when playing, lets a player trash a card, and then grants a player another 2 money if they also trash another card in the same turn. I love trashing cards. The benefits and combo potential of this particular card are right up my alley with my preferred playstyle. It's inevitable to compare Dominion expansions to each other. I think this will go down as a very popular one because of the feeling of power it grants players. Compared to recent expansions, I like it better than Nocturne, which had too many new card types that felt distracting from the game, rather than additive, but not quite as much as Empires, the addition of the alternate scoring cards of which remain an innovative addition to the Dominion landscape. Seaside will remain my favorite expansion overall, but Renaissance will see a lot of play in the near future as it will take some time to explore all of those project cards. My favorite way to play Dominion is to use 2 sets at once. So my wife and I are in the midst of playing through the other 11 expansions combined with Renaissance. This will prevent Dominion from getting dusty for quite some time. Obscure Bryce Game segment time. This week on the segment, I'm going to tell you about Catan, Ancient Egypt. You wouldn't normally expect a Catan spin-off to become obscure, but this one has, averaging less than 10 log plays a month on BGG. Catan, Ancient Egypt was originally published in 2014 and marketed as a collector's edition of Catan with a limited release print run of only 5,000 copies. It's only become more and more collectible since then. I was fortunate to score one of these copies at half off at a local Black Friday sale right after its release. The traditional Catan rule set is augmented by a few interesting additions. First, the Nile River cuts the board in half and players must build papyrus boats to extend their network across the river and its delta. Then there are God cards, which have the same powers as the special ability cards found in Star Trek Catan and one of the Catan expansion modules. But the most interesting additions are the pyramid blocks, which players can purchase for a particular pair of resources. Players build a communal pyramid with these blocks, and if a player has contributed the most blocks to the pyramid, they get +1 victory point. If they haven't contributed the most blocks, they get -1 victory point. In addition, the player who most recently built a block for the pyramid gets a special tile that grants them a once per turn 1-for-1 trade ability, which is super handy as one might imagine. These cool gameplay elements are enhanced by some nice components, including Egyptian-themed sculpted player pieces and non-traditional player colors, no less. Catan Ancient Egypt has become my wife and I's preferred way to play Catan. The god powers add an interesting strategic element to the game, but the pyramid blocks are really a nice twist to the familiar base mechanics. Having something to pursue in addition to the largest army and longest road works well, and the penalty of losing a point, if one doesn't have the most blocks, ensures this focus remains competitive throughout the game. The Where's the Game Now segment is a segment I did for a few weeks several months ago, and now that we're into the new year, I thought it would be worthwhile to revisit it and take a look at some of the hot releases from 5 years ago and see where the game is now. First up, let's take a look at Steam Park, a major release from publisher Yellow and designer trio Aureliano Buonfino, Lorenzo Silva, and Lorenzo Tucci Sorrentino. The trio is probably best known for Dungeon Fighter, and Buonfino and Sorrentino have not released anything of consequence since Steam Park, which remains their most successful and most owned game on BGG. Silva, on the other hand, had a huge hit with Potion Explosion, and was also responsible for the critically well-received Dragon Castle in Railroad Inc. last year. Steam Park was an Essen 2013 release, but didn't become available in North America until early 2014. It is currently ranked 737 on BGG, which with the huge influx of games released in the last 5 years is more than a respectable ranking. A couple of other Essen 2013 releases that are ranked close to it are Rampage, aka Terror in Meeple City, and Blueprints. In the grand scheme of things, I think we can safely say that Terror in Meeple City has had more of a lasting impact, but Blueprints has not. Steam Park debuted at 23 on the most anticipated list between Madeira and Storm Hollow. Another couple of interesting games to compare it to. Madeira has remained a very well-respected game in heavy Euro circles, but if you're like me, you've never even heard of Storm Hollow. Steam Park debuted at 65 on the most purchased list between Elder Sign and Suburbia, a couple of games that have remained much more popular than Steam Park. But Steam Park has done alright for itself. It has over 7,700 registered users on BGG, and still garners a respectable 40 to 60 log plays a month. It has certainly not become obscure since its release, and it's still in demand. It appears on 1,278 BGG wish lists, while appearing on 348 for trade lists, which is a positive ratio. I own the game myself, and though I haven't played it in a while, the next play would be an out-of-the-dust one. I don't intend on parting with it. 5 years after its general release, it remains a very unique and innovative game thanks to its unusual theme of a robot amusement park and its real-time mechanics. And it remains a game with tremendous table presence, thanks to its 3D amusement park ride pieces. Well, that will do it for episode 35. Thanks for listening.